My name is Jong Hwan Lee from University of Seoul, South Korea. Uh, Thank you so much for making this wonderful. Thank you so much for the organizing committee for this wonderful event. I know how hard they've been working on this, working on for this conference for a long time. So you guys did such a great job, and I also appreciate it for inviting me over to present at this conference too. Uh, I was kind of surprised to see the title of Jan's presentation because that's almost the same as mine, and then when I listen to Jan's presentation today, there's a lot of things in common, but there's some different directions too. Especially the Christina's point. That's what I take. So I will read through the paper. I assume you already have them, but I will skip some part of it, and then I'll just read the paper. So let me share paper with you guys. So can you see this? Okay. Before we begin, actually, my title of this presentation should be, changed because it was originally the role of imagination in anticipatory pleasure, but, the main, theme of the paper is about, what's the role, what's the role of the image maker, the painter in the soul, and then what he does, the painter does for the good life. So it's a little bit different. Yang gave a lot of wonderful analogy of the text, and then I will maybe my paper is more focused on the how to use the imagination and image to live a good life. I got an idea for this presentation when I was listening to a crime story podcast probably last year. A reporter, tried to uncover a very old cold case and realized that there's a witness to the crime. So he went to see the witness, but he was very old, in probably 90s. So he was too old to describe what had happened at that night of the crime. So he said, I can see that in my mind, but I can't get it out of my mouth. Actually, that was the kind of point, how to analyze the paragraph and the problem of imagination in the file is for me. So, my point of in this paper is there's a logos in my soul, and there's a, imagination in the soul, and which are different, actually, not the same. And the painter, illustrate what he sees from the logos into the image, so that the agent can picture herself in the future. So I'll just read the paper from now on. In this paper, this paper aims to answer the following question: who is the painter in the soul in the five levels? Interestingly enough, only a few have considered this question, probably because of text religious reference, but not a few. At least there are two in this print and in this conference. I will examine the painter's role in the soul, who makes the image of the logos in the soul. In this paper, I will maintain that the painter does not daydream about her future state. At the same time, the image he illustrates is not precisely the same as the logos of the scribe in the soul. While hoping for the future, she reflects her logos in the soul.
Sorry, Professor Lee. Sorry, Professor Lee. Your screen is so small, so could you please make it?
Is it better?
Larger? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I can see how you guys see in the screen, so okay, it's better for me to read through too. Okay. Okay, the painter's image helps the agent desire the measured state and eventually the good life. While hoping for something true and therefore good, the agent enjoys the future anticipatory pleasure. I'll show the imagination, which is the source of agent's hope, is essential to living a good life. That is the theme of the five leaves. I will present my account of the role of the painter in the following order. In section 1, the summary of the context of true pleasure, the analysis of pleasure will be presented. Unlike Protagoras' expectation, I will show that pleasure is experienced in the body and the soul, or even only in the soul. I will argue that the intentional and therefore the cognitive element of pleasure is essential to characterize the truth of pleasure. This interpretation of true pleasure applies primarily to anticipatory pleasure and other pleasures because the pleasure that comes from fulfilling the desire is closely related to one's hope. In section 2, I will answer the question, who is the painter? I will argue that the painter is an essential agent of self-reflection. In order to present an image of future and present and the past to the agent, the painter uses logos, the previous memory, reason, doxa. The painter's image provides the whole picture of the both agent's rational and affective side. In section 3, I'll maintain that the painter's role helps the agent reflect herself with knowledge of measure. The painter's role is crucial in having self-knowledge. To live a virtuous and good life, the agent should reflect the painter's image of herself. Then the agent examines her life, and when the agent examines her life, she will enjoy the true pleasure, an essential ingredient of the good life. I will just skip the section 1 because this is just a short preparatory step. So my main point begins from section 2. Section 2, the painter in the soul. I'll read from the second paragraph. According to Socrates, what the scribe writes is memory and perception concur without impressions at a particular occasion. The scribe writes judgments and assertions, both of which could be either true or false. The scribe not only writes those of simple sense perceptions, but also inscribes long-term views about the world. The contents of logos begin with pathema of a particular time. As time goes, and she gains more and more perceptions, the scribe writes logos that is judgment, calculation, memory, etc. of her perceptions. The logos that the scribe writes is the result of those two main functions, perception and reason. Socrates explains that a person takes his judgment and assertions directly from sight or any other sense perceptions. Logos written by the scribe begins with the perceptions, but not the same. The scribe formulates logos, and the agent will desire something based upon the logos in the soul. The opinion and the thought she has formed into the values she holds throughout her life will guide what she should desire. The propositional interpretation of pleasure focuses on logos, probably because of rational elements that determines the truth value of pleasure. The propositional interpretation, Yan already explained a little bit. It is traditional propositional interpretation suggests that pleasure is false because of a predictive error about the future event. A lot of scholars have been arguing this position. However, this explanation is not interested in soul's image, which is not the same as the logos. The painter's image in the soul is different from soul's calculation of judgment. Since the image is illustrated according to the logos, the image includes the soul's rational element. Nevertheless, the illustration is more than just a calculation. The scribe does not copy every sense perception, while the painter does not make the exact copy of the logos. The contents of what they provide are the same, but the arrangement of contents are different. This probably is only the little attention has given to the role of painter. As Frede recognized, the painter has its own unique role, different from the scribe. The painter's image is not the same as the logos of the scribe. The painter follows the scribe and provides illustration to his word in the soul, but painter does not daydream, imagining something groundless. Instead, the painter draws the images which corresponds to those judgments and assertions formulated by the scribe. The painter somehow visualizes, maybe not literally, what is written inside of the agent's soul. The images are two steps far away from the sense perceptions. Logos is written from initial sense perceptions, and their image is drawn from the logos. Just as scribe does not merely copy and paste sense perceptions to the soul, painter does not simply duplicate logos into a visualized image. Just as scribe uses her judgment while writing into the soul, the painter also considers various possible circumstances around the logos, whether the situation she would be is real or hypothetical. Since the image is detached, not but completely from what the agent experiences, the painter's image helps her objectively see her own life. Agent who wants to live a good life considers all possible future life scenarios and evaluate them. Any desire, action, hope an agent longs for are related to the overall scheme of her life. However, it is not always about calculation as Socrates in Protagoras thinks. There's almost no chance that she would live a life of she shall, so she does not consider her and or imagine such a life. She does not even have to calculate the cons and pros of such a life, but she can still imagine such possibilities, not only something daily, such as freezing morning with a cup of hot coffee from regular Starbucks, but also something most unusual, such as winning a lottery or having a skyrocketing stocks. Not only she rationally calculates such possibilities, she also imagines and pictures herself in such a situation and examines how she would feel about it. I'll skip next paragraph. The memory is not just piece of information of past, but mixture of my sense perception, a calculation of perception, and value judgment of past event. Thus, a specific desire initiated with my memory is also composed of several factors. It is more than bodily feeling, data it is my calculation of how much particular action and event would benefit me. I imagine a hypothetical future situation and see if that would be desirable rationally as well as emotionally. This is the painter's role. He pictures a possible situation from the memory, value-based doxa, and logos, my perspective of viewing the good life. The painter provides a detailed possible scenario of what it would be like in the situation. But he gives me a picture of myself with hot coffee on rainy day in November, listening to the song November Rain. It would not be easy for me to evaluate such a situation in terms of good life without imagining it. It is not all about rational calculation. Of course, I do not calculate the possibility. I do calculate the possibility. Simultaneously, my emotion, affection, and all other elements of my life will be under consideration while seeing painter's picture draws for me from the logos in my soul. Okay, section 3. I will read from the second paragraph. The painter in the soul was introduced to provide images of hypothetical self and the situation. The painter's image enables an agent to see herself and to find right integrant of good life. Vogt also takes the role of painter seriously, especially regarding the good life. She holds that we can picture ourselves as a shellfish or a goddess because of the painter and evaluate hypothetical experiences if such a life would be good. This suggestion is persuasive to understand Socrates' account in the Five Lives. Indeed, much more than rational calculation is required in pursuit of good life. The soul's affective side also contributes to good life, as true pleasure is part of human lives. Nevertheless, without assumed position of good, Bach's imaginations of painter does not seem different from daydreaming, while Vogt focuses on the painter's imagination of considering all possible scenarios, even a life of seashell, as possible candidate for good life. She does not seem to emphasize that painter's image is illustrated according to logos in the soul. Socrates says, someone often sees himself in possession of enormous amount of gold and of many pleasures as consequence. Moreover, beside, he also paints in this inner picture of himself that he is beside himself with delight. Without knowing the standard, how can I enjoy true pleasure while I picture myself in appropriate situation? In addition to the image provided painting the soul, A certain kind of objective knowledge is required to picture a certain situation which will contribute to the good life. Next to the three paragraphs about how future pleasure can be false or true. This question I raised to Yan earlier, and I don't really have the right answer, but there's two different suggestions from the scholars. I just presented them. And here, I will read from this paragraph. Therefore, not only exact forecast of the future event, but also the expectation of how I would be like in the situation, decide whether a particular pleasure is true or not. In order to expect correctly, I need to know what my limits are. I cannot have everything. There's a certain amount of goal, health, and others that will bring about harmony in my life. To find exact proper amount of amount for me, I need to know the measure that would be the best for me to secure harmony in my life. At the same time, I should know myself because I might not tolerate what I used to do. Additionally, it is crucial to see how to come to possess gold. It is required, if I acquire such amount of gold unjustly, it will turn out to be bad. As Demas suggests, Socrates in Gorgias does not seem to highly regard of life of the unjust tyrant, who enjoyed a long life in the riches and power. This kind of seeing is more about the rational consideration of all possible surroundings around me. In this case, the true or false pleasure comes probably not from calculating all the possibilities, but from not knowing myself and things about myself. The lack of such knowledge, as a result, is the cause of false pleasure. Then how can I have self-knowledge? The key is the painter's image in the soul. To picture me in a hypothetical situation and examine if that is what I should desire, I need to know who I am. There are several aspects of myself to consider. Uh, this is the example I used already in the section 2, but I'll just read it. Let us take a situation listening to Guns N' Roses on radio November Day again. Of course, I do remember first time I listened to the music and loved it. However, I've been changed since then. Maybe I'm not too emotional anymore since I've gone through tons of ups and downs. I do not become easily sentimental because of cold rain anymore. Because I'm 20 years older than then, I'm more worried about catching a cold on such a wet November day. Also, I heard someone I do not like loves the song too. Not only my emotions, but my body also has been changed. The loud heavy metal guitar sound used to touch me softly. However, my ears would not tolerate loud guitar riff anymore. If I want to enjoy anticipatory pleasure from listening to Guns N' Roses on wet November day, I need to know my soul and body if I would surely enjoy such a situation. The painter helps me to see myself. He illustrates the image of myself listening to the music as long as the logos is true. The knowledge, judgment about me are true, then the painter will provide more precise and correct image according to the logos. The painter will consider all possible related conditions while seeing the image of myself. The agent considers special effective and emotional aspect and try to illustrate them into my soul correctly. As Frederick correctly observed, I use my mind's eye to see the picture, which is drawn according to the logos abstract from what previously judged and said from sight or any other form of perception. Unlike a suggestion that we have only logoi for future pleasure, however, we do have pictures from the logoi and our mind's eyes to see them. However, seeing both rational and affective sides of myself through painter's image is not sufficient to have true self-knowledge. I need objective standard to evaluate myself. The knowledge of measure is crucial for self-knowledge. The knowledge of measure is essential to those who want to live a good life. I love to drink a few shots of bourbon on a rainy November day. The first 1 or 2 shots give me pleasure, but if I go over a specific limit, for example, 8 straight shots, I will not be able to control myself. Of course, this limit is closely related to knowing myself. Additionally, I need to know the strength of bourbon too. I need to tell the differences among the various alcohol and understanding drinks characteristics if I want to really enjoy the alcohol. Knowing my alcohol tolerance is one thing, and understanding the power of alcohol is another. Without these two kinds of knowledge, I would not be able to find right amount of bourbon that makes my rainy November day pleasant and contribute to my life's overall goodness. I should know the measured amount of all integrant of good human life in order to know myself truly. Without the knowledge of measure and the painter's image that let me see myself objectively, I can't tell whether a specific desire of my life contributes to good life I should live or not. The pleasure from fulfilling such a desire is surely true, and therefore should be included in the list of good at the end of the Philadelphus. As a result, first rank of life at the end of Philadelphus is what is connected with measure. Applying the measure is well proportioned and the beautiful and the perfect, and others, the second in the rank, reason and intelligence, which are required to use knowledge of measure to make unlimited measure, comes in the third of the final list of Philadelphus. Conclusion. Socrates in Philadelphus argues that both body and soul should work together to find appropriate pleasure in any situation. To correctly and thus truly expect future events and subsequently experience true anticipatory pleasure, I need more than a rational soul, a calculating machine. In order to picture my future life, it is not enough to cold-headedly consider existing resources and conditions as well as all possible outcomes. Sometimes I should see bigger than what I deem reasonable. At times, I need to plan my wildest future, which I fear that I might not justify with all the means now I have. Imagination helps me see what I want and expect something beyond my present power to bring about. This is the role of imagination, in which the rational and affective part of the whole person work together. Both knowledge of measure and the painter's image enables an agent to reflect herself and as a result to have self-knowledge. This level of such a good life is probably not easy to achieve. Only those who are loved by God might be virtuous enough to know themselves and enjoy true anticipatory pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank for your yeah. Thank for your thought-provoking talk. Okay, it's time for Q&A session. If you have any question, could you please raise your hand? Okay, Satoshi Okada.
No, it's just upload. Oh,
Ah,
okay.
okay, okay. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, no worry. Yeah, yeah.
I'll just
Professor
make a
Gill.
quick. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Professor Gill, could you please raise your question? Yeah, after Professor Gill, I will give an opportunity to Professor Cho.
Thank you very much for that interesting paper. I just wanted to ask you a question about, it's maybe a confusion on my part about what Plato is trying to say, but I want to start with your story that you began with of the old man who had been the witness and could see what he could picture what had taken place, but he couldn't put it into words. What confuses me is why Plato has it the other way around, or it sounds like it, or what sense you make of the logos being first, and then afterwards we imagine on the basis of the logos, because it would seem to me that that example goes the other way around.
Okay, in the Philadelphus, Plato, Socrates says, the painter draws image from the logos. So a logos comes first, as you said, but it is harder for me to, articulate in logos, like the way it, accumulates in my soul or in my mind. It comes the perception first and then logos and the image. But the image comes first when it goes out of my mind, or when I use or expect something for the future to fulfilling my desire. So maybe that's why it is harder for me to articulate in logos, but can see the image within myself. I don't know if that's Plato's intention or not. Maybe I got the, some, possible, answer from the, listening to the podcast, but maybe that's not what Plato intended to. So I will, try to, consider that point more in the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Professor Cho, could you please raise your question? Yeah.
Thank you for your very interesting and stimulating presentation. I think, yeah, as an Aristotelian, I would like to know more about the relationship between Plato and Aristotle. But I think Five Levels is the hot spot where Plato and Aristotle meet together. I think this dialogue includes many insights, which lead to the moral philosophy, moral psychology of Aristotle. And in regard, in connection with this issue, I would like to know more about your conception of memory. You mentioned memory in the Five Levels, but I know more. How do you think about the relationship between memory and logos? How memory is connected with logos?
Okay, actually, I tried to explain that in the first section of my paper, which I didn't read through. The memory is what is written, what I experienced or calculated. A lot of things can be memorized in my soul, according to Socrates in Philadelphus. So why the perception? First of all, perception. This is what Jan's point earlier in the first presentation of this section today. But what I experienced through perception, that is experienced with my body and the soul, which is stored in the soul. That is the first thing I memorize. And also what I want to, what I desire for. My desire begins from my memory too. So maybe this is back to the point of the Mary Louise Gill's point. Memory writes as written is the logos in the soul, and then the painter, convert into some kind of mental image, which can be used to picture myself in the future. So from the perception, the memory and logos and the imagination, the image, there's very close connections in between. What else I need to answer? So memory is, and I think I mentioned about, some kind of value, some kind of, doxa, the judgment and calculation. Those things are also part of the memories too.
I think we know every animals have memory from our experience. Then if you are right, Plato is the opinion that animals have the logos in connection with the memory.
Okay,
of
maybe
their past experience.
Maybe I can explain this in this way. After listening to your, the question, and maybe I can answer, better. Okay, animals, I think the Plato in this philosophy think that even animals have some kind of memory too, because without memory, no one can desire anything. Because, the memory of the being, empty, which initiated, the desire in the soul, and not just only human beings, but animals too. Maybe the difference between animal desire and human desire, or the animal memory or human memory, is about the calculation. That is why a lot of scholars have been trying to solve this problem of pleasure in terms of the propositional way, because human beings can think, but animals maybe not. I mean, the think means not just remembering some experience, but more rational, calculating way of thinking. That's what I mean. So maybe, in Socrates in the Philadelphus think the animals do not have that capacity to calculate, but it still has memory of its perceptions, and they still have the memory of their perceptions, which they experience the bodily motion in the soul and the body together. So maybe there's that's the difference between human memory and the animal memory. I hope that's the right answer to your question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, the final question is going to be raised by Sehyuk. Go on.
Oh, thank you for your wonderful presentation. And I got two questions. You said the scribe in our soul need the painter's help, right? How is it possible? Is the painter better part of our soul, or sometimes he needs the help or not? And this is connected question. And if I have the best scribe, best calculator in my soul, does he still needs the painter's help or not?
I think that, you need a painter's help too, because, calculating is not enough. We have a lot of emotional, aspect of our lives, the feelings, emotions, and sometimes I just clicked, to a certain song, which I cannot explain why I was clicked. That is something like beyond, calculation. So maybe the painter use is, imagery to, visualize, not just visualize the logos, but present something that, possibility, which, maybe I cannot calculate right now. So maybe you need something further than just calculating the function of the soul.
Yeah.
Thank you.